making shots and documentaries and all that.
So Rajdeep, it doesn't surprise me at all that the oldest film production house in India that is continuing to make films is from Calcutta. Although the information is new to me, also because Calcutta has had a very long tradition of filmmaking, almost as old as Bombay itself, and so many of them used to actually work in Calcutta and Bombay at the same time, whether it's a Bimal Roy, down to those times the New Theatre was a big one as well. What happened at some point, especially post-Ray, that Tollywood, as we call it, which is the Tollygunj film industry, was not as mainstream as it used to be, at least even in the art house sphere. What happened? What change took place that we don't hear? I think there was, of course, Rituparna Ghosh, and we've had a few others as well. Rituparna would be a great example later. But it's not that film industry anymore. What changed?
Yeah, of course. First I'll share a trivia, then I'll answer your question.
Yes.
Like Aurora Film Corporation, before it used to be a filmmaking company, it used to be a film exhibiting company. And they started in 1905, 1906. That time there were tents and they were showing films. Like from abroad and reels made here, and they were showing these films. From there they graduated to making the first Bengali short film, which was around in 1917-18 at that time. So coming back to your question, so what happened post-Ray and say post-Mridal Sen was, I believe, like Bengali cinema got divided into two parts. One was this really great art house cinema, which was not bringing in money. And then there was, because Bengal...
Unlike Ray, who was commercially successful pretty much throughout his career.
Some of his films were.
Commercially successful.
Not really.
In Bengal,
Yeah,
his films used to always make money.
No, not all the films. Some of his films.
Yeah.
Some of his films made money, but not all the films. And so these art house films were not bringing in the money. And Bengal was always, they were not so great like business wise. So there was not enough like great money to begin with.
Right.
So like even at the golden age of Bengali cinema, when all the Hindi cinemas would be like copied from Bengali original films, the budget of the Hindi films would be much bigger.
Right.
So the commercial Bengali cinema, which started happening, which was not done, those were really low budget films, and they were earning back the money. The industry used to like run because of them. So this division where there was once at one side there is this intellectual films, which a majority of the audience doesn't relate to, and on the other side there is this mass cinema, which lacks cinematic quality. This conflict between the two, I believe, it made a lot of harm to Bengali cinema, and we are still trying to like breach the gap, and we have not yet been able to reach there.
As it happened with Hindi films, there was a merging of the mainstream and parallel strains at some point or the other. Nikhil, your story.
First of all, thanks. It's such a lovely audience. Thank you, guys. Unlike these guys, it's not my first feature. It's my third. The last one was my third. I come from a small town in Maharashtra called Aurangabad, and my exposure to films was pretty much hardcore Bollywood throughout. My uncle had a video cassette library, and
Interesting.
that was my kind of first.
Tarantino.
Tarantino, Ragopal Verma, Madhur Bhandarkar, quite a few of them actually.
Yeah, that's August company to be in, but so that was the first exposure to cinema, so to say, and watching a lot of those films. And then I went on to, like all Maharashtrian middle class boys, it was a choice between engineering and medicine, and I just chose engineering because it just seemed easier at that point. And when I went to the hostel, I was studying in Pune, a place called Baramati near Pune, and that is when the internet had like arrived, and torrents were like a big deal, and that's where I was truly exposed to the films that inspire me. And around, I think, the second year of engineering is when I decided that I'm not going to do this and I'm going to do something else. And so I ended up being like the black sheep of a family chock full of PhDs. And that was a very tough kind of decision for my parents as well as for overall society to kind of take. But I went on with it. I went to film school in Sydney, and I returned and I made my first feature, Pune 15. It was a neo-noir film. It was unheard of in Marathi as a genre. So it was very hard to find funding for that film. I went to around 50 financiers, established, non-established, uncle's uncle, friends, father-in-law. I tried every avenue that's possible. And finally, I think Girish Kulkarni was who had signed on to act in the film. Umesh and him, they just said that, listen, you know what, we'll just produce it ourselves. And that's how the first film came to be. And since then, it's just been, you know, it just happens. I think miraculously one fine day somebody decides to make the film and the film happens.
Right. I mean, of course, in your case, what's different is that while you're from Mumbai, that's where you operate from. Mumbai is the show business capital of India in many ways, but Mumbai is also the capital of Maharashtra, which is where Marathi cinema will come from eventually. Now there is a Bollywood and there is Marathi cinema. How do they coexist in that same space?
They technically don't coexist. They really fight to coexist. And that's like for screens, for for audience gratification, for everything. I think it's just.
And for producers as well.
For producers, for everything, I think it's very difficult. I think now the newer crop of Marathi filmmakers, Nagaraj, where it's me. We've just decided to kind of start producing our own stuff. So Godavari we produced ourselves. It just gives us more control over how the film is to be released, over how the film is to be marketed. Otherwise, what happens, I think, which is probably the biggest challenge for Marathi cinema, is the fact that we have to compete with Hindi, now Tamil, Telugu, Kannada, all films in our kind of home ground.
What's the competition? Like, what
it's
is
for
the
screens.
struggle?
It's for basically for screens. It's predominantly in the theatrical business because the marketing budgets are limited. So, and of course the films don't have that kind of pull. Even a hardcore Marathi audience would prefer to watch a Hindi film on the first Friday, and that's
have a choice.
Yeah, so there's more choice. So the playing field is more like violent. But that said, I think things are looking up, and the good thing is that there is a constant inflow of good Marathi cinema that keeps this one film every 2 or 3 years that manages to kind of,
The sense I get in Kantara was, of course, in some ways a turning point. I think Bengali cinema is still waiting for a Kantara, sort of a Kantara moment. Was Sairat a moment for Marathi films in terms of how huge it became and how it was loved across the state and, of course, mainstream otherwise as well?
Absolutely. I think what Sairat did for Marathi cinema is that it made us aware of the fact that there is an audience that can...
There's an inventory, right? You can make that kind of money.
And unlike Kantara, I think Sairat never really became a nationwide sensation. It did that business in Maharashtra alone. So we were just made aware of the fact that there is 100 crore audience for a Marathi film, which is Marathi people predominantly, which was unheard of. And now recently another Marathi film did around 80 crores. It's only in Maharashtra, it's Baipan Bhari Deva. So I think it's just the fact that there is a ticket paying audience of that volume in one state alone. And I think this holds true for all states in India. It's just crazy that until Sairat, even the industry was not completely aware that there is this massive potential for a theatrical breakthrough, so to say. So yeah, it literally changed the game for Marathi.
Jasmeet, your story.
Yes, thank you for having me, firstly. And so my story, I had written, so I was doing my CA at one point. I was going to become a chartered accountant, and during the internship...
So 3 engineers and 1 CA, right? Would that be correct to say?
Business graduate.
Business, okay. Business, CA, engineer. So nobody really starts off wanting to be a filmmaker, clearly. If that's one...
Yeah, I wish I
We
did.
start off wanting, but we don't start off doing.
Not everybody doesn't take the leap. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I grew up with a lot of films. My dad was a huge film buff, so I actually grew up with lots of poetry and music, a lot of old...
Where was this?
At home in Bombay, in Bandra, that's where I'm from.
That's another rare thing, huh? You barely meet people in Bombay who are filmmakers who are actually from Bandra.
I know, it's so bad. But
that's amazing.
Yeah. So, but I grew up watching a lot of films. Dad watched very good cinema, so that was good for me. And but I didn't know I would become a filmmaker. I was doing CA, I could clear the exams, I was working with Ernst & Young, and I realized that this is not for me. So it was a process of elimination for me. Okay, CA doesn't work. I joined advertising, I worked with McCann and O&M. I liked it a lot, it was a great world for me, but I wanted to do more. And then I started assisting on ad films, and then I realized, oh my god, I want to work on a feature film. Because I thought that maybe direction is the route I want to go to. And I went to FTI for a summer course. It was not like a long course, not a long film course. Not to study filmmaking, it was like more history and watching films and discussing.
The film appreciation course, that's quite popular.
Yes. So while I was in advertising days, I went and watched. I'd seen the films before, so it was nice to discuss. But then I realized that I need more formal training. So I didn't know anyone, and there was some gym friend who said somebody is hiring, and I started assisting on films just like that. Because I didn't know anyone in the film industry, even though I'm from Bandra, because I didn't have friends.
Nobody. When you would be surrounded by someone who has something to do with films, even in your neighborhood.
Nothing.
Like no one.
Nothing. No one. I still don't have personal friends. I mean, I know now people from the industry. They've been kind enough to guide you now, but then it was different. Then I started assisting on films. I worked on 6 features as an assistant, but I didn't want to make those films. I wanted to make my own kind of films. And I realized...
What were these films that you assisted on?
Musafir Zinda. Hansal made a film called Woodstock Villa, which is not one of his best, but I worked on with him. So I worked, and then I realized that I need to write. So I stopped assisting and I started writing. And I wrote my first script, which is a very big budget period film based on 2 poets, which the media really covered because I took it to people and I wanted to make that as my first film, not Darlings. And then it was taking time. I had actors who were interested in the film. I had very big producers who wanted to make the film, who wanted to produce the film for me. It was in the papers. People had, I think media had decided that the film is being shot and made.
Right, because you already cast, is that what happened?
Yes.
Yes. So who were these 2 people that you cast?
I cannot say.
Okay. Amrita Pritam and Sahil Ludhianvi.
Yes. So it's a tough one to cast because you need someone to play Sahil Ludhianvi and Amrita Pritam. And but people really liked the script. And in spite of them liking it so much, I think it was just not great timing. This is what I realize now looking back. And everybody said you should write 2-3 films and float them with producers. I said no, I want to just make this film and I want to focus on one film at a time. Then I realized it's going to take longer. Sanjay Leela Bhansali was supposed to produce this film. So I said it's taking longer. If he can't put it to